Hey everyone, it's Richard Metal Fan here, bringing you guys a brand new 2021 album review. And today we're going to be looking into one of my most anticipated albums for 2021. And today we're going to be talking about, an album from my favorite band and one that definitely doesn't really need an introduction. And as you can see by the title, today we're going to be talking about Senjutsu by the legendary Iron Maiden. Their new album, which came out today through EMI Records, I believe is their record label. Now, I don't really need to say much about Iron Maiden. I mean, Iron Maiden, what else can be said that hasn't been said already? One of the most legendary bands in heavy metal music, been around since the mid 70s, and a lot of people don't know this, or some people that don't know, is Iron Maiden is my all-time favorite band. I've been listening to them since, first getting into metal when I was a teenager, and they've pretty much been one of my favorites, and they've putting out classic albums such as Power Slave, Number of the Beast, Peace of Mind, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, and they pretty much had like so many different member changes. Like their only true members that appeared on every album is sort of Steve Harris. Well, he's the only original member, and Dave Murray, their guitarist. Well, he was briefly left, but he's been on every album. Him and Steve are. And they've had some live changes, like they've had different singers, different guitarists and drummers, but ever since their, in my opinion, probably one of the most underrated Maiden album, Brave New World, they pretty much had the same lineup since then, and they've had 20 years without a member change. But this album, it of course follows up their 2015 album, The Book of Souls, which I thought was a pretty good album. And that was a double album, and that was pretty much one of my favorite albums of 2015. But here we are 6 years later with their new album, Senjutsu. Does it kind of live up or exceed what the Book of Souls has? In my honest opinion, I think it definitely has. And similar to the Book of Souls, this is also a double album. Or and just like a lot of these songs are actually written by, of course, my all-time favorite bassist Steve Harris, which first time since probably Virtual 11 probably X Factor, where Steve Harris has a lot of like songwriting credits. Let's just dive right into it. The production, I always think Iron Maiden, for me, for the most part, there's like a couple albums where the production kind of sounds a little bit thinner at times, names that always are great. Bruce Dickinson, the dude's is in his 60s, and he still sounds great. It's quite a testament to show that Iron Maiden could still in their 60s that sound great. Like I've seen Iron Maiden 3 times, and they pretty much put like bands are like in their 20s or 30s to shame live. But Bruce, in my opinion, is one of the best vocalists I've heard, one of the best frontman ever. Definitely knows how to get the crowd going. And the guitar work on this album is tight. Dave Murray, Adrian Smith, and Yannick Gers both have like great riffs, and just like you could definitely tell like whenever they do their solo, just like the tone is like, oh, I know that's Adrian, that's Dave, or that's Yannick. Like both of them all three are great, and I'm still curious why Iron Maiden has 3 guitar players, but they actually pull it off really well. They've been doing this for over 20 years with the 3 guitar thing, and they pull it off well. Bass wise, it's always audible. You could definitely hear Steve Harris's bass lines, that galloping thing that's like part of the trademark of the Iron Maiden sound. It's really heard. And drumming wise, Nico McBrain does a really great job keeping the beat and the tempo. So without further ado, let's dive into this album track by track. Now, as we're kicking things off with disc 1 is the title track of the album, Senjutsu. Now, normally we would get like a 3-4 minute like speedy single track, but nope, I feel like they're changing like the formula again. And here we have like an 8+ minute of just fury, thunder, and technical guitars. And I feel like Iron Maiden has crafted a great track that is 8 minutes over but holds your attention the whole time, and I could see them like opening like a live show whenever they come back to the States. I feel like Senjutsu is pretty much all about warfare, and this song is pretty much all power in the music, and it's a really heavy song, particularly from Iron Maiden, but it doesn't sacrifice sort of like the normal musical qualities that they have. And Bruce's voice just goes from gravelly and low to like soaring in like a blink of an eye. And the one thing to note, that's just the one thing in my opinion is the highlight of this song, and and another one is Nico McBrain's drumming. I just can't wait to hear this song live at full force of the drumming environment. Overall, I feel like this is a great new sort of like way to open up the album, and I think they kick it off really well. And then we move on to the next song, which is called Stratego. Now, it starts off with that galloping bass line from Steve Harris and some really great drums that are such a key element to the classic Maiden sound. And this is another great song that showcases that the band has no intent of slowing down yet. And this song's written by Yannick Gers and Steve Harris, and it is an instant main line from Your Body in Heaven. It's just makes it go well in a live setting. And Bruce is on really great form, and it's just his vocals are great, and just the guitar solos here are really multi-layered but never overly fuzzy. And Stratego is another great song. Then we move on to the next song on here, which is called The Writing on the Wall, which in my opinion is one of the more powerful songs and more interesting songs. This was also the first song that was released from this album before the album was announced. And this song, from when I first heard it, it's a little bit different compared to some of their previous albums, but it also has that signature quality that drives it forward and is undoubtedly kind of like win over kind of like a new generation of Maiden fans this performance. And Bruce's vocals are on point, adding his signature touch as the song progresses, and I feel like his tones are great as well, with adding sort of like a rock and roll crunch to the soundscape. And it almost first sounds a little bit westerny, but it still has that Maiden sound. And the guitars have like a new refinement, and it doesn't take like the limelight until like the middle of the song. But overall, The Writing on the Wall is another pretty good song. Next up is Lost in the World. Now, Lost in the World is a song that requires like multiple listens when you first hear it and to get like the whole appreciation of it. And down from like the guitar tones to the main riff, and this one sort of like twists and turns, but it just leaves you just fulfilled at the end of the day. And then after that, we get to the next song, which is Days of Future Past. Now, Days of Future Past is the shortest song on the album, which clocks in at a little over 4 minutes. And this song musically kind of reminds me of something from Brave New World, but it's not sure if that's like the intention for the band or the songs to like sound like some tracks from previous albums, but I feel like it works that way. And then closing out disc 1, we get the Time Machine. Can't stutter there for a second. Now, this pretty much fits in with this era with sort of like the storytelling and the musical style, and Bruce's vocals just dominate the song, and the chorus just goes into your brain before you know it. The song is over. It's a quick 7-minute ride, and in my opinion, it's a great way to end disc 1. And then kicking off with disc 2, we get to Darkest Hour. Now, this song was written by Bruce Dickinson and Adrian Smith, and I feel like those two have a great like chemistry when it comes to like writing songs together. And this is unlike sort of like the songs that they've written before, which follows sort of like a single sound. And this one lyrically talks about like Winston Churchill during World War II and the battles. And you obviously hear Winston Churchill do that little speech before Aces High if you ever seen the Live After Death concert video. But anyway, this song is a very methodical track from Bruce and Adrian, and it doesn't take away from the overall feel and the greatness of it, though. It's another interesting choice to kick off with disc 2, and this feels pretty much like a ballad a little bit, similar to like Coming Home from the Final Frontier. And I feel like this song would be great in a live setting with sort of like the crowd chanting the chorus along with Bruce Dickinson. Overall, Darkest Hour is a great song. Next up is Death of the Celts, and this is one of the first like 10 plus minutes epics from Steve Harris of the track, and there's the last 3 songs were on this album are written by Steve Harris. Man, it's a hell of a song. It's just 10-minute song. It pretty much brings together heavy metal, like folk sounding music, kind of similar to like Dance of Death and much more. And it almost musically kind of reminds me a little bit of like the Clansman from Virtual 11. It tells like the story of the last remaining Celtic tribes from the Germanic tribes, forcing them into pockets of UK. And musically, I feel like this is one of the best songs on the album. If you judge your metal songs by air guitaring, you'll be shredding along with the solos of this track. It's a very dense, and once again, it requires a lot of listening. Once you do, you'll be heavily impressed with this track. Next up is the Parchment. Now, in my opinion, of the 3 songs that Steve Harris wrote the last 3 songs, this in my opinion is like the weakest of those songs. But that's not like saying it's like bad, but I feel like it's just something you have a little bit of improvement, but it just doesn't really pack that punch as like the songs that that came before in the last song that closed out the entire album, which we'll cut up next. But it makes up with sort of like the heavy guitars and the tail of the strong that gets with Iron Maiden. And if you're into music that tells a story, this track is for you. And then we close things out finally with the last song on the entire album, and to end disc 2 with Hell on Earth. Now, I think this song is just, wow, a really great way to end this album. And I feel like Maiden just, I don't know, it's hard to describe it. It lyrically talks about like the world on fire, people dying, and sort of like the pandemic's raging since we're still in this pandemic right now. We're halfway through it in the US with this COVID shit. But I feel like Iron Maiden just managed to put that all into one good song. And this song conjures up a lot of like emotions that you wouldn't experience listening to an Iron Maiden song, and it fits really well. No, and it just as you think it gets so good, around the middle section it gets better, and this is a really great song. And Steve Harris knows how to write some of the greatest songs, not just with Maiden, but in metal in general, and Hell on Earth just fits really well. Now overall, Senjutsu by Iron Maiden, one of my most anticipated albums of 2021, and they definitely impressed me. So if I had to give this album a score, I'm going to give Senjutsu by Iron Maiden a solid 9.5 out of 10. So yeah, that's my review of the new Iron Maiden album, guys. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about the album, and I'll see you all in the next video. And as always, keep it metal.